welcome to you talking to me. Today we focus on food, but more on whether could consumers still trust food labels. In 2013, the horse meat scandal made headlines news across Europe. The story was that horse meat was found to be in food products labeled as 100% beef. So this has worried a lot of European consumers. So how to restore confidence among them? Maybe would a mandatory labeling on meat, food, in processed food be the solution? That's what we're going to discuss today with my two guests, two members of the European Parliament. Hello, Mrs. Bolan, you are an Irish member from the European United Left.
Yes, thank you.
And Mrs. Anneli Jäätteenmäki, you're Finnish member from the Liberals and Democrats. Hello.
Hello.
So in 2013, the horse meat scandal came from Irish food inspectors who just found that horse meat in frozen burgers was beef. And then the UK in February had been selling beef lasagna, and this was from a French company, but actually this was made 100% with horse meat. So, Mrs. Bolan, do you think that a mandatory labeling, origin meat labeling, will prevent this scandal?
Well, I think with the horse meat scandal was criminal activity, so it was a case of fraud. So it's slightly different. It wouldn't have prevented the horse meat scandal, but what it did highlight for people across Europe was the murky kind of trade that was happening within processed meat, and that it was very, very hard to trace from farm to fork. So it kind of brought it to people's attention. So would country of origin labelling for processed foods prevent the horse meat scandal? Maybe not, because it was criminal activity, but it certainly did highlight what we need is more traceability in the food market, so that it would be easier to track it down much quicker.
So, but Mrs. Jäätteenmäki, so how can we be sure that, okay, the traceability will be more controlled, but how can we be sure that we're going to eat 100% beef and not horse meat in our meals? Because fraud can happen even with more traceability.
But then it is question of criminality, as Lynn Bolan said, but I think that labeling food is the only way to give right information to consumers, and so it is question of traceability, trust and consumer rights, and also quality. The quality is very important, and if the food chain, it knows that their name is known for the consumers, I think they stress and do their best to give good quality.
So there is another point that opponents to this mandatory labeling said it's the cost of the industry. So according to a report from the European Commission, it showed that the cost for food business will go from 15-20% up to 50%. So Mrs. Bolan, do you think people should pay more for better food?
I think the question is, who did the Commission ask when they did that report? They asked the industry themselves, would there be a cost involved in the process? And that's where we get this figure from. Of course, if you're going to ask industry to do labelling, they're going to say, oh no, it's cost prohibitive. What we want to see is a proper analysis of the real cost, because many of the consumer agencies, particularly one in France, looked at the cost of processed beef in lasagna, and they found that the cost would actually be 1.5 cents to the consumer. So we need a proper report done, not one that just asks industry, will it cost you more, because we know the answer. The same as the Commission have said that consumers, while they're 90% in favour of the labelling, they're not prepared to pay for it. You ask a consumer, do you want to pay more for a product? They're going to say no. So we need an independent study looking at all the factors.
And another important point to highlight is that we put also the responsibility on the consumers, because they're asking, they're looking for cheaper and cheaper food. So are they responsible as well to finally have some beef and cheaper lasagna, but not in beef with horse meat? Mrs. Jäätteenmäki?
The consumer protection and quality questions, they are very important. And if somebody says that the costs on labeling should be 50% plus on the prices, I must say I don't believe it. And I can give you an example. In Finland we have a company, Atria, who gives very detailed information concerning the origin, and the price isn't higher than on the other companies. And now we are asking the Commission to investigate what are the real costs, so that that is not question of make the law just now, but to investigate what are the prices. And for me it's very difficult to understand why can't we accept to investigate this problem a little bit more.
So according to you, even to you both, there won't be any price higher than now?
We've seen in Ireland exactly the same as in Finland. We have a voluntary scheme, Board B it's called. 33,000 farmers voluntary sign up to that, 122 food processors, because it's good for business. That's why they're signing up, because people want to know where the food comes from. But it's not, if you look in the supermarket, as Anneli has said, the cost is no different. In fact, in some cases it might be even cheaper than another product.
And still I would like to say that the wines are labelled, and the prices on wines, they are different. There are different qualities, but I don't think that the wines are 50% higher because of there is made in where they are made. So that, but it's good to investigate that.
Okay, actually we have a question from Andrea, our Spanish partner from Castilla y León Radio. She recorded a question for you, so we can listen to her.
I would like to know if you're going to require the same food security to third countries, which there are already trade agreements, and some others, as United States, which speakings are still open.
Mrs. Boylan, could you answer to her?
I think it's very important. Again, it goes back to consumer confidence. People make their choices of why they're buying a product and where it comes from, sometimes based on the process that food is produced under. The United States, for example, has a very different food regulation policy than we have in the European Union. So if you know where your food is coming from, you can make an informed decision as to whether you want to buy that product or not.
And you, Mrs. Jätenmäki, you believe
food
that
security is very important issue, and just now it is also important because we have the transatlantic trade negotiations on the table, and we know that at the European Union and in our own countries we have a different level of and different so that there are different rules for the food safety. And as I said, we have labeled wines, so that why it is so difficult to label also food.
Okay, so we going to continue now with our reactions on Facebook. So we have Giorgio who reacts and said, horses coming from Romania, the meat purchased by someone in the Netherlands, and finally given to an Italian company. Is this the kind of Europe we want? There is enough meat in Italia, he stressed. And then we have a question from Gita for you, so I will ask you to answer to her. So why there are some national labels and not one EU label for high quality food? So and this will be possible for all farmers in the European Union who are not at the same level at the moment. So would you believe in a European high-level food quality?
I think with the consumer protection agencies, like Buick, for example, that looks after it at the European level, they have investigated this and they found that only 10% of people questioned would think that the EU, non-EU would go far enough. And as I said, because people make their choices on very different reasons. Some people want to just support their local economy. Some people will do it for ethical reasons. Other people will buy a product because of an environmental reason. So they want to know the country of origin at the very bare minimum. That's what the consumer is telling people.
But Mrs. Jätenmäki, can a European high-level label on good quality food be a solution to prevent fraud, for example?
I think if it is the question of prevent fraud, but it is question of quality and consumer protection, so that the consumers, it is said that 90% of consumers, they want to know the origin of the food, so that I think that it's a little bit different question to give the right information to consumers so that they can make a choice and then try to prevent the fraud.
So fraud goes and stays through criminality
it is possible also even if there is labeling, that's true.
So, okay, even if this resolution, so the vote is going to be tomorrow, do you expect a big majority on this vote?
I hope so, but I don't know, because some people are also against to investigate what does it mean if we have mandatory labeling. It's not yet question of labeling, but question of the costs, to investigate the costs.
So, but even if it passed tomorrow, it's going to be through the European Commission, then the Council, so it can take years and years. So before that, I will ask you in 30 seconds, what do you expect before this mandatory labeling? Mrs. Boland.
It takes time. I think people would have said that it wouldn't have been possible back in 2003 to get mandatory labelling for country of origin for unprocessed meat. Then they said it wasn't possible to do it for anything other than beef. We've seen now in April we're going to have it for poultry, pork, goat and sheep. I always am a firm believer if you keep pushing, you will eventually get there. Sometimes it takes an awful long time in the European Union to get things done, but I think that if we keep the pressure up, because this is what consumers want.
Keeping pressure, you believe in this, Mrs. Jätemäki?
Yes, and I hope that if tomorrow the answer is yes, the Commission will deliver very quickly, and then European Union could show good example and be efficient and show that we can and we will.
Okay, thank you both of coming, and thank you for following us. See you next time. Bye.